Hello, people out there in podcast land. It's Gordon coming back to you in digital Artcast form. This month again, we are bringing some of the best talent from around the industry, talking about their past and careers, decisions they've made, and of course, how they've ended up where they are. This interview, of course, is coming thick and fast off the heels of Finian's episode. And again, dealing with some major players in the concept world and visual development world. I managed to get a really solid guest today, someone whose work I have drilled over for many times on ArtStation, and of course wanted to get him on here to talk about his process and the things that he's done in his career that's helped him get to to his accolades, to the things he's done. So if you guys are enjoying this, remember that you can reach out to me on YouTube. We're on Spotify, lots of podcast services around the world. Remember to leave a like and comment. It's always great. It helps out the channel. And check out our Discord below. We have one in the description. You can join. We have about 100 artists or so that are on there that are usually talking, exchanging ideas and giving feedback. So if you want to be part of that, you can, of course. So on to today's guest. He is a concept artist and visual development artist in animation, film, card art. There's a lot of things this artist has done over his career that has spanned, a great amount of work. So let's get him on to talk about his beginnings and what he's doing now. Please welcome along Mr. Jose Vega. Hey, Jose.
Hey, how things are going?
Yeah, good, man. Good. Thank you for coming on and chatting with us. I know, as always, you're probably very busy with work and obviously dealing with the COVID situation across there in the United States. But yeah, it's good that you came on.
Yeah, thank you for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course, man. So, yeah, I mean, we were talking earlier, and I think we kind of touched on the fact that my first introduction to you was your work in Castlevania, which, of course, was incredible. And, that whole animated side of Netflix now has come alive, I think, because of your show and because of the work that Powerhouse done, which you obviously played a pivotal role in. So that's been a huge accomplishment. Congratulations on that. You've also recently placed third in the ArtStation challenge. So that's also been a great accolade as well, because the ArtStation challenges are huge. So again, congratulations on that. But taking it back to your humble beginnings, hailing from Puerto Rico, what was your upbringing like in terms of art? Were you drawn from a very young age?
Not really. I think my first introduction to art, if you can call it, was I had some really good friends in high school, and I was actually not into anime, but they were, and they introduced me to it when I was in senior year, and so they always like to draw the the characters from the anime, Dragon Ball Z and Rurouni Kenshin and all that. And that was actually my first introduction to art. They would show me what color pencils to use for skin tones and all that stuff. And it was just we'll look at a picture and draw it in the paper, and that was pretty much it. But I was always the sporty kid. I was into basketball and skating, and I'll play video games, and but nothing art related.
Right. So then, was this a thing when you were leaving high school? Did you want to go and pursue that towards education wise in college, university, or?
Well, this is a very long story, so I'll keep it short.
We have an hour to fill. You can talk as much as you want.
What happens is these friends, it was two of my friends and me, we started drawing anime characters and stuff. And, when you're in senior year, these colleges go to your high school, and, they sell you their school so you can go to college, to their college, and that sort of thing. Well, we decided to go to the Art Institute in Fort Lauderdale. And I had no idea what art is looking back. I thought I knew, but I was just doing something that I thought it was cool. I really didn't have I had no idea what anatomy was, or what a 2H pencil is, or Photoshop or anything like that, And the thing that happened was a month before we were supposed to leave, they sort of like bailed out. They decided not to go. And like I'm a very stubborn person. And I was like, well, you guys are not going, I'm going. So I went there and I I went there by myself, and 2 months, like 2 years, like the first 2 years were really just a waste of time, really, because I was in college. I was 17 when I graduated high school. I was by myself. I was just doing college stuff, and
Yeah.
and funny story is that I actually met Carla Ortiz at my Photoshop class, and it's funny now that I look back and I see where she's at right now, and like
Yeah.
we were in the same Photoshop class, and I'm like, and I look
Oh,
back
wow.
at all the time that I wasted and all this, and I'm like, I always tell her that story every time we meet. But yeah, the first 2 years were really just a waste of time, and then I got a class for I think it was character design with this professor called Radford, and he was like a anatomy genius. Like I took his class, and like people would ask him about poses and stuff, and he would like draw the pose, naming like every single muscle, so we would understand what's happening. And when I saw him, I was like, that was like the first time that I felt that like love for the art. I was like, man, I really want to love this as much as this guy does, like I want to know as much
The
of this guy.
passion was like coming across.
Yeah, and like even though I was doing like super crappy, I mean, it was like super bad drawings. I was like, man, I really would love to know as much as this guy.
Right. Yeah.
And that was like probably the first time that I actually like, it was like a spark, sort of like ignited the whole love for the art thing. And I mean, I appreciated art because I would like collect art books from like video games and stuff. Like I had a huge library. But it was like one of those fantasies, like, I wish I could do this. So I collect it, but I don't practice enough to do it. I just like to see it,
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. When people
right there with you. Right there with
you. People that want to sing, but they only sing in the bathroom type of thing.
Right. Okay.
But fast forward, I graduated. I got into like 3D a lot because it was, 3D is very technical for me. Like, you do this and this, and then you get this. And to me, that was like easy to understand. And so I did the 3D. I was doing like Maya stuff, and as soon as I graduated, I was, blessed enough to get a job doing like 3D architectural stuff. And I worked there. I worked at an architectural company for like, it was like 4 or 5 years, right out of college, which was pretty good. And the recession, the economical thing happening 08 and 09, I got laid off. And then...
Were you still in Puerto Rico at this time? Were you still there?
I was in Florida still.
Okay, right, yeah. So you didn't go back after graduation, you were still in Florida.
Yeah. So like I spent 4 years in college in Fort Lauderdale. I would go back to Puerto Rico for like a week in between trimesters. But since I got that job right out of college, I just stayed there. The company was there in Fort Lauderdale as well. So it sort of worked out. But then I got laid off, and because of that whole economic thing. And I wasn't doing really like a lot of, even doing the 3D stuff, I wasn't doing like, any 2D artwork at that time.
Right.
I was just working and, doing other stuff. And after that, I went through a whole, portfolio of like different jobs. Like I was working at restaurants. I actually almost became a police officer.
Wow.
If it wasn't like, if it wasn't for like a day extra, like I had to move from Florida to California because I was like, I didn't have a job that would sustain my living.
Okay.
And I was trying to get into the police force, but because I was into martial arts and all this stuff,
Mhm. Yeah,
and
yeah.
I went through the whole process. I did all my tests. I did all the physical tests and all that. And I was just waiting for that letter of acceptance to the academy. And they pay you to be in the academy. It was going to be good money, and I was going to be good. But it took so long that I couldn't wait anymore. So
Mm.
we were going to move to California, and the day before, we had everything packed in the car because we were driving, and the day before I checked the mail to like make sure that I get all my letters, and the letter was there for the academy. And the night before I was leaving, and I was like, oh man. So I had to throw it away
Yeah.
and just forget about it, and we
Mhm.
drove to California.
Yeah. I mean, that's really interesting to think that you spent so many years thinking about non-art related jobs. I mean, it's always a weird thing when you find, you interview a lot of people on this podcast, and people speak about like, I've been drawing since I was 3. I always knew I wanted to work in
Yeah.
film and animation. So for you, was it like a job you almost fell into by luck, or?
You mean the art stuff?
Well, I mean, and generally, like, because you were leaving, you're saying like at the point you graduated and the recession hit, you were thinking about being a cop. So, I mean, what was it then that swung you into an art job after that? What kind of stopped you just getting a normal kind of Joe job?
So, so when I moved to California, that was like, everybody has some dark ages in their life. That was like my time, and like, I was living in my car for a while. Like, I didn't have a job. I worked hospice for a little while, so that was very interesting, and a good like wake up call. But I was staying with my uncle because I had nowhere to be at, and he was, giving me a room while I, stand up on my feet. And my mother called me one day from Puerto Rico, and she told me that my grandmother, her mother passed away, and she was like very old, so it was sort of like expected. And she told me if I could, fly down there to just be with the family for like a weekend and then come back. And I'm like, yeah, sure. I mean, I don't have a job. I don't have anything, so might as well.
Right.
So I pack a backpack for the weekend, and during the weekend they were like, why don't you stay in Puerto Rico if you're not doing anything over there? I'm like, sure, okay. So so I decided to leave, stay in Puerto Rico, and I started doing a lot of jobs in the fitness industry because I was into fitness, and so I was working out a lot and all that. But I remember back in the days when I used to watch all these concept art books and the games and all this stuff, and I was like, man, I think this is a good time to like start over since I'm starting over anyways. So I just said, I just decided to start practicing, and I became like obsessed. Like, I was just like literally like very obsessive. Like I remember I was working 3 jobs. I was working at a restaurant, at a gym, and selling like products for like gyms and stuff. Like I would go to different gyms and also like products and all this stuff. But I would do like, and I would always tell this, like I would wake up, I would watch back in the day I was watching Design Cinema, the Fenzu channel.
Oh yeah.
And I would watch an episode, I would do all my jobs, and then right before bed I would do the same thing. Like I would watch another episode and practice. And I did that for a bunch of months, and I was just obsessive and just practicing and practicing and practicing. And in 2012, December 2012, I got my first, I signed my first freelance job, which was like a small illustration, but it was like the first thing that I got paid for like doing, concept art or illustration.
Yeah.
And then from there, it just started growing. And it's just, yeah.
I mean, it's interesting that I don't know if you could even, thinking back now, it seems like such a long time ago, but what was the catalyst that made you want to start being obsessed with art again? Was Was it just a drive to try and do something better with your life, or was it a thing where you just didn't want to, maybe settle for where you were at the time, or?
Yeah, I think it was. I think it was a combination of things. Like I went through like literally living in my car, homeless, for a while, and like I was suicidal way back like when I was in California. Like,
Oh wow!
yeah, it was very bad. Like I wasn't the person like I am right now.
Right?
Like
Yeah.
like I would literally like it's funny. Like I would literally go like I'm not a person that like I don't drink like
Right.
alcohol and I don't go to bars or anything like that.
Right.
Like I would go, like in California I would go to bars just to like find trouble.
Oh wow!
Like yeah, it was like it's literally like not me.
Yeah.
And that and like I was starting over. Like I had I was doing the whole fitness thing, but it was just wasn't feeling my like it didn't feel like it was feeling my full purpose. And also I think it's my nature of being like super stubborn and like obsessive,
Right.
that I just really wanted to do it. And like even though I went through all that, like all the pieces were, all the ingredients were there to just really really start doing that.
Right.
And the whole thing about, I mean, it might sound cliche, but the whole thing about being super old and having no regrets and thinking back, oh, I wish I could have
Yeah.
done that and all that. And
Yeah.
I just didn't want to live my life like that.
Yeah, I mean, kudos to you. I mean, for getting to that point in your life and it being so low, and then obviously taking the complete opposite direction, and then trying to better yourself. I mean, there is of course so many people who, not just move out to California, but try and make themselves, in America. And of course, it's either a hit or miss, and it sounded for a lot of years, you were kind of lost and not finding your way. But then, of course, you found it. But it takes a lot of inner strength to not only admit though that you had those dark times, but to talk openly about them. So thank you for that. But yeah, it's something I think people don't talk about in this industry a lot, is the fact that it's really fucking hard to make like a living in this industry. Like, people will say for guys who work at Blizzard or Riot Games or, Powerhouse Animation, like, oh, you've made it. But then they don't see the, like you said, the years you were living in your car, or like you were in Puerto Rico working in fitness. And, so I think this is why I love these podcasts, is because you can delve deep into the backgrounds of people. And sometimes people will open up and be like, hey, it isn't easy. I mean, we just had Jan Urschel on, who of course has worked on, Ghost in the Shell and, Star Wars at ILM and all this different movie franchises. But he at one point was like, I really hate concept art, and like I'm not actually, outside of my job, I don't really like drawing and stuff. And I was like, holy shit, like like it's actually refreshing to hear people be so honest, because you get so many people, like I say on the podcast, who are like, oh yeah, I've been drawing since I was 3 and I've always wanted to draw, and I draw 20 hours a day. And it's we talked about that with Jan, how there must be so many people in this industry who just like go to their work, do their job and come home, and don't have, they don't enter contests, they don't have huge ArtStation profiles.
Yeah.
Some of them don't even have ArtStations. So it's different, right? And have you found that side of the industry has been more open to you because you were like that? Do you find that like a lot of the people that you work with are a bit more quieter or low key, or?
Not really. I think, that's funny how you say that, because like I think it was like maybe 3 years ago I was at a CTN, and I met with a buddy of mine. He's Puerto Rican too, but he actually quit the job like a month ago or something. He works at Blizzard, and he gave me a tour through it and all that. But like he introduced me to like a few people there, and these people are like in the top of the industry working at Blizzard, and I had no idea who they were, because they don't have like any social, anything at all. And it's like, but they were like at the top of the game, and like, Dirt Network was just in quiet. It wasn't like most people now in social media where, who knows who and all this. So, so I think either way works. It just depends, who you are and how
Yeah.
you want to tackle this whole art thing.
Yeah, I think there's definitely two sides of the industry where, like, one side is the people who are constantly online or, posting tutorials, videos. But then, of course, there's the side of people who, like, just want to get their work done and then go home and then,
Yeah.
not think about the next day. Because I was the same when I went to Blizzard. I was meeting a couple of different people and, like, I knew most people, but then there was people like, my friend at the time, David Long, was pointing out, he was like, oh yeah, and this is such and such. And I was like, okay. And I was like, I have no idea who this person is. So, like, but then they're talking to me like I should know. And I'm like, oh, I'm not really sure. But it's like the industry you think is small initially, but then once you dive into different studios, you're like, oh, there's so many people I don't know. Or, and occasionally, like, you'll meet people that have maybe worked at the same studio or have done things for similar projects, but then it's very rare that you meet people where it's like, I have no idea who this person is. But then when it happens, you're kind of like, oh, that's really, really weird. So was that the case when you went to, like, Powerhouse was the end goal, right? That's where you are now, and that's where you're doing, like, some of your best work. But is the team there people that, like, you were like, oh, I know who this is, or, I've seen this, or was it more people who were doing good work but weren't as public?
So it's a little bit of both, because, like, when I got there, I actually, if I think back, I don't think I knew any of the artists that was working there, right. But I realized that there's, like, this whole community that I had no idea existed of animation on Twitter, and and like a lot of the people that work in Powerhouse, they're very well known in that community. Right. So it's like, you just don't know how many communities are around, because there's so many, and like you just don't know, And when I started working there, I was exposed to it, and I actually wasn't a guy that was on Twitter back then,
right?
And I get into Twitter a little bit here now and then, but when I go there, it's like, I see them that they're very well known in that community. Right.
Yeah.
But if you go to ArtStation, you don't see them. So it's like, it's different.
Because ArtStation, I think, is more for the static guys. So, like, people who are taking images of 2D stuff, or the 3D environment artists or character artists who are taking renders of their stuff and then posting it. Right. Whereas the animation, because it's a motion thing, Twitter is probably a good source for that. Right. Probably even linked to Vimeo. Like, it was the same when I managed to intern at Axis in Glasgow. Like, the guys at Axis, a lot of those guys who were in animation, they had Vimeo reels and stuff like that, but they weren't on ArtStation. So, you were getting shown a lot of these guys' work, and then you were like, oh, okay, this is really interesting. But then, of course, you had to really search for them later on, because they didn't have as much of a public appearance. There was guys like Bram Sells working there who were, of course, like Magic the Gathering artists and art directors, and then Paul Canavan was there. But but then there was people, obviously, you were meeting who are also superstars who I didn't know about, who were in, like, there was a character model there. I can't remember her name for the life of me. I'm really sorry for the person if you know who I'm talking about. But I was looking at her desk at one point. I was like, oh, she had the ZBrush Masters, like the book, the printed out book, and I was like, oh, the book, really a lot of good artists. She was like, yeah, they sent me a free copy because I'm in the book, and I was like, oh shit, I really should probably know your name. Sorry. Yeah, she's an artist now for ZBrush doing character stuff full time. Natalia something. She's Russian. She worked at Axis as an environment artist, and now she's a character artist. But she was at the ZBrush Summit last year, 2019. She did a talk. But yeah, so like that happened to me as well, where, like, people who are, like, super established and have these amazing portfolios, and I'm like, I'm sorry, I have no idea who you are. And that's like when you go to events as well, because I remember going to, like, not just Lightbox, but a lot of events where, like, you're talking to somebody for like half an hour, then you're like, oh, where do you work? And they're like, oh, I'm an environment artist at Blizzard. And you're like, what the fuck? Like, you have no idea who these people are, but you talk to them just like they're generally. And that's how I managed to meet Raphael Grazzetti for the first time at THU. We just sparked up a conversation. I just said to him, oh, I really love your work. It's really great you're here. And then we just got chatting. And then, of course, we're friends now. But, like, it's just a thing where, a lot of these conversations happen and you have no idea who these powerhouse people are. But I think that's also a testament to the way the industry works, and the fact that people are very humble, right? They could be some of the best people in the industry, but then they will always make time to speak to you or help you out with stuff or give feedback. So I'm kind of glad in that respect that the industry is like that. But then what was it that drew you to powerhouse at the time? Was it specifically the project? Because I wouldn't even know then back then when you were brought in. Would they have told you what they were working on?
Not really. I actually, the funny thing about that was that was, so like when I first started doing, like when I was almost full-time freelance back in when I was in Puerto Rico, I would apply every year, like probably every 3 to 6 months, I will do like a batch of applications to like all these companies and stuff. And one of those years, I went to CTN as part of my, because I will always try to go to at least one, convention a year to just network and do stuff. And that was part of like my plan. And that year I was in CTN and I was just going through the booths, doing portfolio, getting portfolio reviews and all this stuff. And I went through their booth. And I remember Sam was there, which is the art director there. And I showed him my portfolio, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I think you applied to our company, and we're actually thinking of sending you an email to see where you were at and all this stuff." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool." But I had no idea who they were or like what they were working on.
Right.
Which is totally irresponsible, but I mean, I will apply to like 50 applications, and it's like,
yeah, of course.
I don't know. But anyways, a few months later, he sends me an email, and they didn't say the project, but that first time, it didn't work out because the financial part of it, it just wasn't working for me, and so I had to decline it. And then I think it was like 8 months later, they reached back and they say, "Oh, we're working, we're looking for people for Castlevania. It's going to be in Austin," because they do have a California office. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, that sounds great. But, last time, we didn't agree on these terms and all that. And so we negotiated and it sort of worked out. And I did a trip, and this is another crazy story that actually my boss likes to hear, because like they offered me the job, and I was like, it's in Austin, and to me, like Austin was just like this Western, horseback people, horses, just
right. Okay, yeah, deep Texas, deep South.
Yeah, I had no idea what Texas Austin looked like. So me and my wife took a plane for like a short, quick weekend just to see what Austin was, and they gave us a tour to the studio. I just loved it. Whether it was like around September, weather was great. It was just like amazing. We had some great food, we got back to Puerto Rico, and I accepted the job. They gave me the offer, and we did it. Yeah,
that's awesome, man. Yeah. And then again, like, it sounds always crazy when people ask these things, and it seems like the most cliche questions, but you're always like, "Oh, did you know Castlevania was good?" Because I mean, that series did explode on Netflix. Like, the first season especially, like, I think people were just taken aback with like how well done it was, like how well it was animated, the story, because Castlevania obviously has a very long legacy in the video game. So, translating that to a TV series is obviously going to be difficult, because you're, like, which vertical slice do you take? Where are you going to start from? Who's going to be in it? Is it going to be a la carte? Is it going to be somebody else? So when you were first initiating that kind of whole visual development aspect of it, was there a very clear outset from the beginning about what you would be working on in the story? Was that all kind of built when you walked in?
Well, the majority of the stuff was already set in, because when I got in through halfway of pre-production for season 2. So season 1 was already done, and the style was sort of already established. But when I got there, one of my main things, and I told them this from the beginning, was to like taking a look at the actual pipeline that they do and see how we can improve it. And one of the ways that we did that was, incorporating the whole 3D aspect of it. And that was like a major thing, because now, in every production that we do at the studio, we use 3D for the series at least. And so, you know, even though everything or the core of it was sort of like established, it's like an evolution thing through each season. And I think you can see that visually a little bit.
Yeah. It was really interesting, I think, even though when season 2 ended and I was looking at a lot of the behind the scenes footage, I was actually really surprised to see what was actually 3D and what wasn't. Because even one of the scenes that takes place in the Belmont, the library, the whole thing that's below ground, I was really surprised a lot of that was 3D. I was like looking at a lot of those angles thinking, that's really well done background painting. But of course there's painting on top of it. But
right.
The fact that like so much of the architecture underneath it was initially built in 3D geometry was the thing that surprised me. I mean, was the goal specifically just that you wanted to speed up that process?
Yeah, so like mainly is to do that because since we do a lot of outsourcing for like animation and like backgrounds and all this stuff, you know, the more information we can provide, the better results we get, but also the more content we can create within the same time limit that we have. So I'll give you an example. When I first started, we would do like, maybe 2, maybe 3 final backgrounds per location.
Right.
1 to 3. Right now we can do 8, 10, 12 within the same time period for each location. But not only that, we can also provide a fully 3D model. We can provide a textured model because we texture them, we light them, and all that. So the goal is to be able to do more within the same amount of time and have a more consistent quality, because that's a huge thing, the whole consistency thing.
Well, I mean, especially knowing what I know about animation and the fact that these have to be pushed out relatively quickly, because I know obviously the first season they probably had a little bit more time because nobody really knew what was happening and knew that it was coming out. But of course, I think from season 1 to 2 there was a significant jump in when it had to come out or when it had to be pushed out. So of course, that sped up process will help, because animation in general, if we even look at the Japanese animation that comes out in that side of it, like those guys are working like, I can honestly feel so bad when, you look at a lot of those interviews of those guys who are like, I haven't slept in 3 weeks. Like, my hand is like damaged because I'm drawing so much. Like, I was actually watching I'm trying to remember what the video was. It was a manga artist who was working on her series, and she had a staff of like 10 people who were obviously doing other pages. There was points she was drawing. She was sleeping at her desk, like her head, like she was sleeping, but she was still drawing because she was so tired. And that was just to get the next issue out, because obviously they have to come out every week. And I was like, I can't understand how, people over in Japan have that kind of work ethic and still manage to lead some kind of life. But of course, with animation in the West, like the way we do it now, that's still, compared to most other production schedules, very rushed, because you guys are obviously, you're trying to churn these episodes out as quickly as you can while maintaining the same level of polish. But then, of course, sometimes I feel like there has to be a sacrifice somewhere. And then do you feel like, I suppose you would probably say no, but do you feel like you lost something transitioning more things to 3D? Do you feel like there was something lost that, the first season maybe had that, you couldn't maintain with the production times?
What do you mean?
I mean, like, probably because the new season had so much integration with 3D. Do you feel like it maybe would have looked better or felt more grounded because you drew everything in the first, or not drew everything, but there was more to the elements, there was more probably handcrafting in that. Do you feel like the 3D process has changed it too much or not enough? Or
probably a bit, depends on what we're doing. It's like, I think I can compare it with like traditional painting and digital painting. Like when you look at a really nice traditional painting, or like even when you take people like, for example, Carla Ortiz, where she has like a solid traditional background, for painting, but she does digital painting. I always say that, like, you can always, there's something about people that, even though they do digital painting but have that traditional background, there's something in their paintings that people that started in digital painting like me don't have. And like, right. It's something that I cannot put my finger on it, but it is that's, I don't know if it's the craftsman of it or like, there's that special essence of it in their works that you cannot just replicate it.
Right.
And, the same way is just with animation, when you have like something 2D animated, you will always have that feel. Right. But our 3D work is mostly for like environment stuff. So like, sometimes we get a model and we give it to the post guys so they can do these 3D camera animations while the 2D character is like, moving with it. But I think as long as the like general aesthetic and quality stays up to par, it should be fine.
Yeah, I mean, in general, like, I mean, I'm not bashing the second season. Like, I feel like it was, leaps and bounds above what you guys were doing in the first one. Yeah. I feel like there was a step up in terms of, like, I think even like the combat, the sequences where, Alucard was training with the guys from Japan, like, a lot of that stuff was like really, really well done animation wise and fight choreography, because you even see a lot of those times when, you get to see the behind scenes of the fights that are in, the sketch trials or the sketch tests or pencil tests, sorry, where, they're just penciling out the whole motion that they're taking when they're fighting, and some of that stuff just looks, so incredibly well done. But then, of course, you've got, I'm imagining some of the best animators there also that are working on that. So, I mean, like, would you say that with your production and the things you're doing in Powerhouse, are you more kind of 50-50 with 2D and 3D, or do you feel like it's more 3D? Because I know recently, obviously, you've done a lot of work in Blender recently, building kit bash kits and stuff like that. Is that something that came from your work, or is it something that you've always been kind of pushing in the background on your own personal work?
Yeah, I started. Well, I was using Maya at work when I first started. I only transitioned to Blender last year around November, I think. Right. But I think, like, the way I always explain that the work is like 3D is not the final end or thing. 3D should be just a support. Like, even when we hire like 3D artists, that's a support type of thing. But like, if you see season 1, season 2, season 3, like, it gets 10 times more crazy as seasons pass by. And right. So like, we have to take into account, okay, if you want to do this or this thing in this season, we only have this amount of time. So we have to figure out how we can do it in that amount of time, because if not, we'll have to do something else. So right. If you want to get it done, we can only get done if we do this 3D amount of work right. to be able to get it done. And then we can, try to match or make it look more 2D-ish right. and that sort of thing. So, I think there's like a lot of factors that contribute to the, budget wise, how many animators we can animate or hire extra to do this animation, if we have time to do all this 3D work, if we have time to do all this backgrounds and all this. So I think it's a combination of a lot of things that will help make that decision.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's at this point such a huge production schedule, because obviously now you're doing multiple shows. You're not just doing Castlevania. So I mean, like, there's so much work to be done in that. But then, how are you finding that with your personal work? Because obviously you're still doing a lot of personal work. Like, you have your YouTube channel, of course. I mean, like, your studio tour was really awesome. I really loved that video the other day. Props on the Goku graphics card cover, by the way. That was a real nice touch. I was like, oh, that's really cool. So
I love that thing.
Yeah, man, it's all good. So like, how are you finding, because you're obviously now engrossed in these files, and these series, do you feel like your personal work still gets enough time outside of your work?
Yeah, and I think, at least to me, is like I have to do that because, like, I always say, like, the time that matters the worst is from the most is from 7 p.m. to 12 p.m.
Right.
Everything I do from 9 to 5, is most of the time, sort of like automatic. Like I just do it
Right.
automatically because it's what I do.
Yeah.
It's very hard for me to fully and controllably grow as I'm working in the studio, because
Right.
I gotta get stuff done. I cannot spend 5 hours trying to learn a new software, type of thing, because it's 5 hours that I quote unquote
Yeah.
lose.
Yeah.
So I have to do this personal, because in the personal work is where I actually grow as an artist, and then that growth gets, or is reflected in my studio work afterwards.
Of course.
So I have to do all that. Plus, I mean, there's a bunch of reasons, other sources of income, more, just getting better as an artist, just in general, just because I just want to be better.
Yeah.
So all that takes place outside of work, and then that gets reflected into my studio work.
Yeah, I mean, like, definitely it's got to be a struggle because, of course, you're wanting to do things and have a life outside of your work. You've got a wife, your partner, you've got things to do, you want to go places and things. So, I mean, it's obviously difficult now, or different, because, COVID has us all inside all the time, so you can't really get out as much as you want to. But then, of course, I think YouTube is a good outlet for that, because I know myself, like we were talking about, I've done, 20 interviews since January, and I was condensing 5 or 6 into a month because you were stuck indoors all the time. But then I think also you draw a lot of inspiration from outside as well. So how are you dealing with being stuck in, because you're working from home now, right? I'm assuming, are you guys working remotely?
Yeah, we're working normally, probably more than before, but yeah, we're working
Right.
from home.
Yeah, I mean, because I was watching a recent No Clip documentary where they were interviewing the Supergiant guys who done the Hades game, and they were saying that the difficulty they were finding is that, when you were in the office doing stuff and you came home, there was that separation. But now, you're having meetings at your desk all day and you're doing things at your desk, and then if you're still doing things at your desk at night, like, you're never leaving really that place. Is that affected you mentally, or?
No, I mean, I think it's for sure different with everybody, but to me personally, it's not really. It hasn't been difficult, and I don't think it's difficult to be able to do that, because I think, and again, this is for people that, going back to what you were saying before, for people that want to grow as an artist, for example,
Right.
I'm super happy and fine with people that just they do their 9 to 5 job in the art industry, and then the rest of the day they just do whatever they want.
Yeah, they just go home. Yeah,
they just go home to their families, or watch football, or whatever they want to do, as long as they're happy with it. But if you're a person that really wants to grow, that time after work is super essential. So that becomes a priority, and usually priorities are easy to find. If you're hungry, you're gonna find food and you're gonna eat. That's a priority. But in that sense, for me, it's easy. So, and I also come from freelance. I did 5 years of freelancing before the studio job.
right.
And I was in Puerto Rico, where there's no industry in this. So I was, practically at my home all the time. So to me, it hasn't been hard or anything. Definitely has been hard for my wife, because she's more, she needs more the social aspect of it. So we try to accommodate for that.
Get out as much as you can, and try and keep a bit of normality in your life, as opposed to life
for sure.
isn't normal right now, so it's hard. But I mean, even on that, do you feel like that's something you would want to say to people who are trying to aim or aspire to the level you're at now? Do you feel like the time you have outside of your work, your personal work, is what's helping you the most?
Oh, for sure. I always say, I'm obsessed with this stuff, right now. So I always want to get better. I'm always trying to find new ways. And I think for people that want to grow, that should be, it's okay to be like that. If you're a person that is fine with where you are, that's totally fine. And I'm super, I'm happy for you. But, if you're either complaining or saying, oh, I cannot get better, or that, but then you spend you're binging a whole season on Netflix, over a weekend, then I mean, you don't have any excuses, you know?
Yeah. You put in the effort, man. You got to put in that effort. Yeah, I mean, like, it's interesting though as well, because like I said, you've had so many amazing. I mean, we've not even dabbled or talked about the fact that, like, you've worked for Magic the Gathering and Wizards of the Coast and other things of that. Like your more full illustration work, because of course, like you said, the stuff you're doing in Powerhouse, you're trying to integrate that that flow of 2D and 3D, but then of course you have a career that's also based completely in 2D, where you have illustration jobs, like you says, for Magic, and you've done stuff for Fantasy Flight, and the CryptoSix stuff, and that I mean, there's so much stuff you've done that's outside of that. Is it hard, do you find, keeping both of those? Like, I suppose 2D will be your first love, right? So do you feel it's hard to keep both of those as sharp, or do you feel like, now integrating 3D, do you feel like you're losing a bit your 2D, or are you still pushing that as much? Or
see, because the thing is, I don't see it that way. I see it more, they're all the same to me, because to me what's important is the final product. Right. So like, and I think I got to terms with that because of that job that I got right after school, I actually hated 3D for like the longest time. And a few years ago, I took a class with Ken Ferglaw. I don't know if that's how you say his last name.
Yeah,
but,
Ken. Yeah, amazing artist.
Yeah. And like taking his class, I realized that 3D, it's just a tool, So like if I want to build a house, I want to have as many tools as possible to build the house. It's not about the tools. It's about getting the house done the best way possible. And, if I do an interior shot of a house on 3D to paint over it, it doesn't mean that I cannot draw it. It's just going to take me 10 times longer. And right. I mean, yeah, I can be super proud after showing this beautiful drawing in perspective that it took me, a whole week to do, but it took me a whole week. And if I can do it in 3 hours in 3D, I'm going to do it in 3 hours. So, so
makes sense.
Yeah. So I think also it's like, I think part of it is like the whole pride of the craftsmanship of doing something in 3D.
The purists out there. Yeah.
And I mean, there's definitely nothing wrong with that. That's the way you want to go. But to me, it's like, I want to get as much work done as fast as possible. Yeah. And no matter how that is, without, plagiarizing, of course, but like, I'm going to, I always say cheating is good. So I'm going to cheat.
Yeah. No, I remember there was a Facebook post, and it was something like, it was like, oh yeah, you can't use 3D in art cheats because that's not the purest way. And then like there's a face underneath it where it's like, oh, art cheats go brr. like people are just like, nah, fuck it, man. Like whatever works. Like, I mean, it's the same in like 3D. I mean, there's certain things now in Maya, like you click a button and it UVs for you automatically. But there's other things like, the hard mesh stuff where you can plug in and, you can boolean stuff without having to retopologize it. Like, and then you'll get the 3D purists who are like, when I had to do 3D back in the day, I had to UV everything by hand. But then it's like, it's the same complaint, right? You can't, if the tool comes along that makes that production really quicker, you can't complain when the tool comes, because you want something that does obviously speed up that process. But then I think it's also the thing that we've said in this podcast forever is that as long as your foundations are solid, once you've got that foundation, whatever you need to use beyond that is up to you. If you need to use Blender, if you need to use Maya, ZBrush, whatever, it shouldn't be a thing where you feel bad or you feel like, oh, I'm not doing it properly, or photo bashing's evil, I can't use photo. Like, fuck it, whatever works and is ever going to get you the best result the quickest, then that's what you want to be using, from the get go. So. Yeah, I think the art purists, I mean, like Jan said it as well, is like, if you want to go down that road, like you'd be as well just being a fine artist, and just painting, like, I mean, which again, like you said, there's nothing wrong with that, but like, if you want to come work in an entertainment industry, like animation or like, games or whatever, speed is always essential because, you're always against the clock for deadlines. So you need to make sure that, like your pipeline, like you said, you were changing that because you want to make sure that you guys aren't like, coming to like the last week and you've still got a ton of work to do. You want to make sure that like these efficiencies are making sure that like, you're not having to sweat the little stuff. You can focus on the story and, the pureness of the show, and the other stuff's taken care of, with the pipeline being so efficient. So yeah, I
Yeah,
think
no.
it's
Also, like the other part of that is like I was listening to an interview a few months back, and somebody said that because it's this whole Unity thing, and how is and Blender, and how all this technical stuff is like growing so fast. Like the person said that it's putting everyone in the same playing field, and I was like, well, I mean, technically, in the terms of the technical stuff, yes, but like there's so much stuff that happens in the background, like design sense, color theory, understanding values and all this, and
of course,
all
yeah.
that stuff. You cannot you cannot cheat if you don't know it. There's not a program that is going to do it for you. So if you don't have that, it doesn't matter if you have the best programs and the latest technology, your work is still going to be mediocre or bad or not enough, good enough.
I mean, even when it comes to 3D, I mean, you could probably fake enough DAS models and some, assets from Megascans that you can make something and throw it together. But then, even then, like, there's a whole science behind the render. So, like, if you don't know that, then of course your renders aren't going to look. They're going to look 3D. They're not going to look like they're 3D paintings. They're going to look like they're 3D models trying to look like 2D paintings. So, if you don't know how to bridge that gap technically, then you're not going to make something that looks good. Like even. I mean, people would look maybe some of your Blender stuff and be like, you're using this with Blender or whatever, but then there's an essence of your 2D knowledge that then translates that into, even something as simple as composition, like maybe putting your guys on the left or right of the screen, making sure they're within thirds or they're using the golden ratio. Like all that stuff will then eat into making it a good image. Whereas like people would be like, I can throw a model into DAS and da-da-da and hit render and then I've got an image. It doesn't work. We all know it doesn't work like that. I think that, like you said, that's what's true is that people think these technologies are killing the artist within us. Like they're taking away the purest form. But then, like you said, because they're just a tool, you're still making a 2D image, but you're just enhancing the speed and technicality of which you make it. You're actually you're not making 2D art. You're just being efficient at making 2D art. So it's probably one of the longest standing things. And every time I go to speak to students, it's the same thing over and over again. Oh, should I use 3D? Should I not use 3D? Should I use ZBrush? It's always going to be the same. Like, I mean, Blender is obviously popular now, but there might come a time where Blender will move away and something else comes in, or Maya might make a comeback. I don't
right.
But then if they did, then yeah, sure. Like as long as you have that underlying 3D knowledge, like you're always going to be able to use the tool. So it's the same with drawing. Like, Photoshop has so many brushes and photo packs and whatever else, but if you can draw and render to an extent with your hand, then it doesn't matter if it's Photoshop or Paint or Sai or Affinity Paint or whatever it is. Those skills will carry along to all the, and even a sketchbook. Like, because I think even one of the basic forms I've always said is that if you're 3D artist or 2D artist or character or whatever, being able to sketch something on a sketchbook really quickly is a skill I think everybody needs to have. It's always a good idea to be able to convey an image, because sometimes you'll be thinking about something and you're like, oh, I can't actually explain what I'm trying to explain. Okay, let me have a pencil and a bit of paper. And if you can sketch, like a scene out really quickly and be like, oh yeah, and put that here. And then people are like, oh right, I get where you're coming from. That kind of communication stuff is essential, and that's a basic drawing tool. That's no 3D, it's no DAS, it's a pen and a bit of pencil. I mean, so it's
that's concept art right there.
Yeah, pretty much. So
it's literally what concept art is.
So now that you've kind of moved on to doing, I mean, you're pretty regular on YouTube, right? Like you're almost putting out an episode like every other week. Is there an end goal with what you're doing just now? Is it just going to be contained to YouTube, or are you looking to launch like more in-depth lessons or some kind of school at the back of that? Or
I am so the reason why I started at YouTube first, like the original mission why I did it, it was because it was back in Puerto Rico and I was teaching at a college. I was teaching concept art and stuff, and I was like, I would always get the same questions all the time. and like I literally got tired of it, and I was like, I'm gonna make a YouTube. I'm gonna make these videos, and then when everybody asks me, I'm gonna be okay. Go watch or episode 20 or episode 34, and like you'll get your answers happening. So it was like the original idea, but like now I just wanna like literally just share, whatever I know, to whoever needs it, and of course there's a lot of you know reasons behind it as well, like I'll put my kids in there and do more extensive tutorials for stuff that I learn along the way, because I'm still learning, so I'll want to share that as well. So it's
the cross promotion is basically what you're trying to address, is bringing people to other parts like your kit bash stuff and things that will also help them, because the kit bash stuff you do is also just a kit you could take and make your own scenes with or make your own paintings. Is that so? Even with Blender, is because I know initially like some of your earlier what am I trying to say? Your earlier tutorials were more focused on Maya. So are you fully integrated into Blender now? Are you fully using that for your concept?
Yeah, everything that I do now is in Blender. So I do like for the kid stuff, I use 3D Code for like the sculpts, just to make more detailed models. And now I've been doing more texturing on Quixel.
Okay.
So, I do my sculpts in 3D Code. I bring them to Blender, decimate them, texture them in Quixel, and then bring them back and make them that way.
So have you been using the Blender sculpt tools at all? Because I have heard, I think in even the latest release, they're quite advanced now.
Yeah, I think I haven't tried the latest one, but when I first tried it I think it was last year or early this year, like, I don't know if it was the computer that I was working on. It was just like super laggy. And it was just driving me insane. And I was probably doing it wrong because I'm still fairly new to Blender, but I picked up 3D Code and I learned it fairly quick. I was able to do stuff fairly quick, so I just stuck with it. And now you're full time in it. Yeah, it makes sense. Even the other day, I think the 2.9 release came out. The guy from Blender was like doing the update, and it got to a point he was saying so many updates he had to like take a breath and like drink some water. Oh yeah, I saw that.
There's so much that's changed. I was like, Jesus Christ, because I know there was an article the other day where Pixar were releasing a thing where I think it now has RenderMan integration. So it's almost like they were saying like it's getting to the point where it's on the production level of like Maya and other animation tools. It's getting to that level where like you could start to seriously use it within studios, which actually blows my mind, because if you think about it, Maya will charge so much for licenses to studios, and if Blender now presents an option where that is free, like it's going to be very hard for people. Obviously you've got to think about integrating it in your pipeline, but then again, if it's free, that's a whole budget. That's like another artist you could hire by not paying Maya licenses. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, I'm a huge advocate of saying today, and I will say that every day, today is the best day that you can be an artist. Like it's just getting better, and like there hasn't been a better time to be an artist because everything is so accessible. And this is another reason why the whole YouTube thing, like even the education part of it, it is so accessible. Like
people are always like saying to me like, oh yeah, should I go and invest in the CGMA or like the Bobby Chu stuff? And I'm like, that's awesome, but like you can sit on YouTube for like a couple of hours and like people will teach you for free. You have like 50 odd videos. I have 60 interviews of people at the top of their game. So like you could sit and listen to yourself and me talk, or other people, me and Jan, and you're getting absolutely inside information. And everybody's there's ArtStation just launched a podcast, Jan's now doing a podcast. Like there's so many people doing so many things for free. So like you said, and even the fact, years ago when people were like, oh, did you hear Unreal Engine's free? Like, you remember when people had to pay for it, when people had to pay to use Unreal Engine outside the studios, and now it's free. Quixel's now integrated into it, so you can now use Megascans. Like, you're almost flabbergasted when people are like, oh, I don't know where to start, or I don't know what things to pick up. Like, I think the problem now is it's like the Netflix thing, right? there's too much choice. There's so much stuff everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely one problem. I don't see it as a problem, but that's definitely I can see why some people could see that as a problem. But I think also it's just people don't want to spend the time. I think that's my.
I think for me, it's more like like when people want to get into concept art, they're like, cool. Jan has a channel, Jose has a channel, Feng has a channel. Who do I go to? What lesson specifically do I start with? But then I think it's hard because a lot of the basic stuff has been lost in the mix. So, I always say to people, look, Scott Robertson has 2 really amazing books. They're really basic. That's called How to Draw and How to Render. If you sat cover to cover with those for a couple of months, you'll get to some very good results. And then think about the CGMA, the Feng stuff, like that's the more advanced things. Even with basic 3D, like people were like, well, Blender's great now because it's free. So yeah, you can learn 3D pretty easily because the program is free to use. So, there's a really good insert, and a lot of people, even, ZBrush has changed over the years, and now most recently with 2020, like ZBrush now supports monthly payments, so you can now pay like $25 a month. You can get the full ZBrush package, even though like for $1,000. I mean, I know it's a lot of money, but then for $1,000 you can buy ZBrush forever. You can pay that, and you'll always have ZBrush. So, there's the tools are very good, that they're very accessible. I think it's like you said, every day you're awake, like it is the best time to be an artist. And with things like my podcast and your YouTube channel, there's so many possibilities just laying out there that there kind of is no excuses to not do great work.
Yeah, I'm actually writing a ebook that the mission for it is like if you're a person that is literally just wants to start, like give you the resources that in terms of like art education that will give you the resources, so at least will help you, guide you through that process. So like if you want free stuff, where you can find free art resources and all that stuff. But
because there's so much stuff that I think people just not even know, because there is so much. Like even the other day, one of my friends was like, oh, do you know about this thing called Anatomy 360? And I was like, no. Where you can download like 3D models, like scans of people, and turn them and change the lights and everything. Yeah. And I was like, where the fuck has this been? like when did this happen? Where was this a thing? And then like, there's ones that are like more for like medical students that I found the other day, but like they break down like to the bone and the muscle. And it's just like, there's so much stuff out there. So I think these, like the book you're writing, or even Ahmed Alduri, like he done a really good YouTube video the other day, and it was like the top like 10 resources for 2D artists, and there was a couple of things in there I was like, even people who don't know what PureRef is, like, I mean, I've even talked to a couple of professional concept artists, and they're like, oh, I've never used PureRef, and I'm like, dude, you need to use it. Like, it is the thing to have in your computer. And then they use it and they come back and like, holy shit, dude, like, where was I without this? I was opening like 40 windows in Photoshop, and now I have like one. But yeah, like, it's crazy the amount of stuff that's out there that people don't know about. It's criminal. It really is. So
yeah, that literally happened to me with my one of my latest clients. I'm still working with them, but it's like it's a huge company, and I'm like, oh, I'll set up all my reference and I'll send you the PureRef file, and they were like, what is that? And I'm like, wait, what? So so now that's what we're using for trading files and stuff like that.
Yeah, it was Timothy Rodriguez that actually told me about it, because he at the time was using it for some of his paintings when he was at ILM, and I was like, oh, I've never heard about it. He's like, oh yeah, all the guys at ILM use it. I was like, okay, so I started using it. I was like, holy shit, this is incredible. even now I'm doing 3D stuff, like it's it's even better. But yeah, like the fact that the window is always on top of your monitor, and you don't have to constantly, and you can hit space and full size things, and then just flick through the images with the arrow keys, like. Just makes but then again, like, it's these little programs that if people have been drawn a certain way for 20 years, they're never going to really change a lot of that stuff. But it's always interesting to see everything. Even what am I using recently? Timely, is it the memory app? So I've got an app now that sits on my computer, and it logs like how long I spend in certain programs. So really? Like, yeah, like at the end of the day, like it'll tell me like, oh, you spent like 35 minutes on YouTube, an hour on Facebook, and then it'll also be like, and you also spent 6 hours on ZBrush or however long. So once you download it into your PC, it logs like all the programs you're using basically.
What's the name of it?
Timely. I'll send it to you after the interview, but
Cool.
yeah, it's a really solid like program, because it also is good for, I think, it's good for younger artists as well, because then it shows like how long you're taking on projects, so that when you break down a project and you then go to like an employer, they'll be like, oh, do you know roughly how long you're taking to make things about, and then then you can be like, oh, usually I would make a character in about 6 hours, or I'll be able to do like a sculpt in about 3, and
Yeah.
so I've been using that basically just to and it also is good as well, because it's one of those things, like, if you go on YouTube for a bit too long and then you see the timer like clicking over in the corner, you're like, shit, I really should get back to work. So it's because they do like a whole, like, there's an integration for like whole teams where you can, like, you can track your team, or you can track certain aspects of projects and stuff like that. I think essentially it was something that was built initially for like project management within like big productions, so people who were like scheduling these things over years and years, and they were making sure that everybody's time was managed in different ways. So
right.
but then if you're using it for yourself, it's just a good check to be like, oh, I spent 4 hours in Photoshop today, I probably could get that a bit faster, because and then at 5 o'clock I went on YouTube, I really should have done that. So it's good for the kind of things, are good, I think, initially, because it does keep a track. But like I say, it also points out those flaws, because if you're sitting like 3 hours on YouTube, then it's gonna start poking you and be like, hey dude, there's even there was one app, I remember, it was like you can install it in your web browser, and it blocks certain websites, so like you can't get on Facebook from like 95, like you can't get on certain websites. Yeah, like they're even worse though, because sometimes you're just like, I just want to go on for 5 minutes, just let me on, just it's like, no, you're not getting on, oh fuck. So yeah, man, there's a whole, I'm planning to do that on my YouTube soon. Actually, I want to try and do like a top 10, like kind of like what Ahmed had done, like essential artist survivor tools, things that you
right.
We thought would be quite good. So
that's cool.
Yeah, man. Okay, well, I think that's a good place to end it on, because we're passing the hour mark. But thank you again for coming on and talking and.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Thank you so much for the invitation. Yeah,
of course, man. Of course. I'm sure everybody's loved it. If you guys have made it to this point, thank you very much for sticking about. I'm sure you've learned a lot from Jose and his experiences. And if you've got any questions or any follow-ups, I'll leave all of his details down below. You can probably get in contact, ask some questions. I'll also link to his YouTube channel, where you can check out all of his tutorials and all his things that he's put up so far. And of course, that's pretty much it. We are on YouTube, of course. We have a visual element as well, so if you want to see a lot of Jose's work and the stuff he's done at Powerhouse and other companies, that will be in here in the YouTube channel. But we're also on Spotify, podcast services, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, a lot of services around the world. So wherever you're finding it, if you want to head over to the YouTube channel and give us a sub, a like, a comment, it's always handy. We usually roll these as live episodes and premieres, so there will be chat during the episodes. People can kind of chime in and talk to each other and ask questions, and we'll try and obviously get the artists always to come on and talk during the live chat as well, and answer any questions during the interview. But yeah, thanks again to Jose for giving his time, and thanks again for you guys for listening. Make sure you check out other episodes we have on the channel. We have a lot. And again, if you have any questions, check out our Discord below. We have a lot of Q&A back there that we do weekly with different students, and some chat over there as well. And we'll speak to you guys later. Bye, guys.
Bye.